Good morning, Frieder Nake from Bremen, an artist and professor at the university there. Would you talk a bit about this particular work?
I will, and I tell you the title, which is a totally meaningless title. It's 12/7/65, number 2, which is not telling you anything but, oh, somebody has done that on the 12th of July, 1965, and during that night, I should say, it was the number 2 of how many, I do not remember. Now that's not important, but it is important in some way because I did not want to give any titles to my things, only a registration, so that I could later on again identify, now what is this? What is its title of the program? There is a title there, and that's Bundles of Straight Lines. So what you see is an exercise, if you like, of straight lines, not all of them totally random, but kept together in such a way that there is what we called super signs. If a single line is a sign, a set of signs can be taken as a super sign, a sign that is based upon simpler, elementary, primitive signs. And the straight line is definitely a primitive sign. So the experiment there was, to which extent can I, using the computer as a totally locally determined machine that is doing things on a local level only and has no idea whatsoever of anything global, of any composition. Nothing like that is known to the computer, but my question was to myself, am I able to put into the background of the program certain structural elements that would keep one line and the next line and a third one together in order to build new, more complex signs. And I believe this drawing contains a nice proof on a very, very trivial level of this being possible. So to the extent that that is possible, that you use some elementary signs and have hidden in the program some description of, should I say, compositional elements that are as such not seen, that show only through the primitive elements. That this is possible, I believe I got some kind of an understanding what it may mean to make a computer that doesn't even see. It has no visual capacities whatsoever, to make a computer to produce something that occasionally may be liked by one or the other friendly person.
When you talk about the computer, how would you say this was different than any kind of tool that we have used, artists have used, people have used to manifest or put out there their ideas? How is it other than just the newest variation on, let's say, the original, stick that made the first cave drawing?
I should almost...
Because it has no mind either, right? The stick, I mean.
Yeah, no. I should almost refuse answering. I will not. I will not. And why would I, perhaps? No, from a theoretical point of view, I would say, wait a minute. You are speaking of the computer as a tool. And I tell you, as a historical little element, by the time, should I say a little later, 4 or 5 years later, towards the end of the 60s into the 70s, artists, now trained artists, who somehow got hold of a computer and now started doing something, they said in interviews, well, no, this is nothing special, it's only a tool. From my point of view, this is absolutely and totally and deeply wrong. You can justify that term only if you understand tool not in a historic, but in a systematic sense. No? Better perhaps an instrument, which is more general. Because the tool belongs to a certain development of technology, an epoch, no, manufacturing, before manufacturing, where the skilled worker still sorry, owned his tools. They were his tools that he kept in precious state and so forth. And the tool meant that he was in full command of what he's doing. When you use a computer, you are not in full command, not at all, no, not at all. The kind of command you do get is that you write your program yourself. I have seen few artists only, I have seen, and they exist, and they do successful works using computers. Yeah, there it becomes possible to talk about a tool. This is not important, they remark, but when I stress it anyway, I want to point at, look, we are living in a totally different time, and that time has brought it about that the tool of a brush, let's say, or even of some etching tool, is still being used, is still being important, still creates, no, the artist creates using that tool wonderful works, no doubt. However, this kind of doing some work means you distance yourself from the surface. No, the surface doesn't exist for you anymore. You think of coming abstract surfaces. Let me tell you one, or not tell you, who am I, to point out, Jackson Pollock, no, is a forerunner of digital art. Why? Because he got away from the canvas, no? Not very far, no? But no, the canvas down there on the ground, and everybody then in abstract expressionism was putting it down on, because they had to be huge, and they wanted to do certain ways of putting paint, or whatever it was, no, onto the canvas. So I'm thinking of Jackson Pollock's drip paintings, no? When he, you know it, no? And then he brings these cans with the holes in there in swinging movement. He touches it up, no? When he thinks, oh, there should be a little yellow shining out of this blue and black, these stripes, no? So he puts a little yellow there, and immediately the entire image becomes a different one. But he gets away from the canvas. That's important. And here you are far away. Now I'm sitting somewhere, let's say, in an office, writing a program. And maybe the machine, the computer, is sitting in some totally different room because it must be air-conditioned, no?
Okay, yeah.
Expensive. So it's away. I'm only thinking of that machine. Maybe I've never seen it. No? Now, with the internet, you do something at home, at your laptop, and you send it to somewhere, and it's happening there. No? You send it to northern Norway, and it produces some light effects there. No? So we have left the time of the tool. That's in a capsule the message.
Well, I'm not quite sure I actually understand or agree with that, but I'm just curious about your this definition of the surface and not touching the surface as being integral to your project. Yeah. I'm not sure I understand, because you're on a surface too. It's not like your work isn't, you're not showing the computer or a projection, you're showing it, and even then there's a surface. So to have to see the image at all, in the end, we need a surface, and so is that a kind of retrograde?
But look, it's good that you
I'm listening.
Send that question back to me, because what is happening is the following: you draw, you paint with eyes wide shut. With eyes wide shut. during the process of producing, you do not see anything, you only think. And then you have the machine to carry this out, what you have thought. No? And then you will be surprised. You will be surprised. This very picture surprised me much, because I had expected something much more chaotic from the program I wrote. And the program I wrote would of course be capable, of course it would, to produce much more chaotic pieces. If I fiddle around with certain parameters that control, let's say, in this case, the length, the variation, you know, if I say, look, don't change the length of the lines, they all become of the same length, it'll be terribly boring. If I say, vary the length by only a little, 10%, it already becomes more interesting. If I then say, vary the length by 90%, it becomes chaotic again, not interesting. So I'm doing research. Should I claim this? I do. I'm doing research in how much can you change, vary, kind of use a dial, to change the variables that determine, in random decision making, that determine such a drawing. And there is, I would guess, something like almost 1,000 random decisions in such an image. Mm-hmm.
I hadn't mentioned at the beginning that that Frieder was one of the pioneers in computer art making. Could you perhaps discuss a little the difference between perhaps then and now?
And now?
Has your thinking changed?
Yes, my thinking has of course changed.
Yeah.
A lot. I believe I now understand much better what I and others did in the 1960s against the background of nowadays. What has happened, again in a short formula, is that what we thought could perhaps happen, that images to a large extent would be determined by digital technology, is now an explosion. You could, a little exaggerating, you could say there is hardly any images in the world anymore that have not been influenced in some way or other by digital. No poster outside there, no movie. The digital image has become a leading medium. Now, of course, in many cases, not for artistic purposes. And in the arts, you still have a lot of no digitality, but you also have digitality. What has changed in my own thinking? I have only later understood that the static image is the preparatory phase of what by the time was called computer art, what I would prefer to call algorithmic art, and what is much more interesting is the dynamic image. Now, this is a static image, and it is here, and it's sitting there, very sad. It's melancholic. It's waiting for somebody to perhaps take a look, and they will not, and so forth. The dynamic image is everywhere, and it will conquer the world much more. What we, I believe, had a finger on was the idea of things to come. And I do believe nowadays, I'm so happy that I'm still teaching, because that means I'm confronted day by day by students who do things that by the time took me much more, a week maybe, to do, where they now click around a little, there you have an image and it's moving immediately. It's amazing. The dimensions of reduced complexity, a thing like this, a student today, well, I'll ask them. When I get back next week, I show them this thing and ask them, write a program. I send you an email if anybody comes up with a program that does this.
Thank
because
you.
There's a hidden little thing in there that I will not tell you here. A hidden little thing. Mathematically, it's almost trivial. But I have met nobody yet who has told me, oh, you know what? Is perhaps the following the case? No? So I'm proud of this because it tells you that you can put into even trivial drawings like these, you can put something into that comes from you, the human being.
You said the other day, and now maybe I'm misremembering, you said either there was no content or no meaning. Zero. You were very emphatic. Yeah. No content, no meaning, or one or the other. Yeah. Can you tell me why that's important to you, that there is no content and no meaning?
Yeah.
In your opinion?
I mean it, of course, a little ironically. That's clear. No? Clear. But that's my first statement. And why is there no meaning? There is no meaning because, or to the extent that the computer is active. And the computer, the program, I should better say, the program has no concept of meaning whatsoever. So insofar as we consider this as a product by a program running on a computer, insofar there is no meaning. Now I take a second approach. If I put around this a little context, then we get into concrete art. No? Concrete art, that is art as it is and nothing else. No? And there you are very strict in it's this color, it's this shape. If you, visitor, see anything else, I'm not against this, but that's your business. It's not in the drawing. It's in your mind meeting the drawing. You know? So in that relation between what we see at the surface and our own perception, which means our own life, our own experience, meaning is being created. And a third approach would say, well, I want perhaps, and often I do, that visitors create by themselves this or that rather low-level meaning, but I want them to do this. And I'm glad if it happens, but it happens only very seldom. We do not have here. I had one program that created a little cross-hatching, only vertical and horizontal, in nice little groupings. And this program now, when I ran it, it crashed and it stopped before the format had been filled somehow. Therefore, if that was the entire vertical extension, it was covered maybe up to here, a little below the middle. No? Therefore, the entire thing looks as if it was a city. If it had been filled, it would not look like a city, not at all. So everybody believes, oh, this is a city. Meaning, no? There is no city, of course there is no city. It's little skyscrapers, if you like. No? But only by there being nothing down here, this idea comes up that this may be the image of a city. No meaning whatsoever when we look here. No? But when we look, we come with context and we come with life, and meaning is always a process of making the meaning, I believe.